My name is Britton. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an organizing business agent, and I will be leading the training with SAC today. The other person that I want to bring your attention to is Nick. He's going to be Nick Frey. He's going to be giving us he's going to help with the feedback and facilitation stuff during the breakouts. If you run into any tech issues or anything and I'm speaking, feel free to private message him and he can help you. And I would encourage you all to introduce yourselves in the chat. You can introduce yourselves with your names, where you work, and if you have a favorite union song. All right, so we're going to get started. Today we're talking about the union principles and fundamentals of leadership. This is part of a intentionally long training series to encourage leadership, develop new leaders, and get more people to start thinking about their own power and how it relates to union power. So there will be people coming in kind of through the waiting room. I want to remind people again that this training is going to be recorded. It's going to be recorded up until the discussions. So during the breakouts, you will not be recorded. And if we have any large group discussion, I will be turning off the recording. All right, so let's get started. So I want to talk about some Zoom standards. You all have been involved in Zoom for a long time, but it's always good to be reminded. So I encourage you to keep yourself muted. It's really difficult sometimes, especially for people that may have attention like deficit disorder like I do, when there are random sounds in the background. So if you can, keep yourself muted. But at the same time, I would also encourage you to turn on your video. We really want to see your faces. We want to know that you're a real person. But most importantly, when it comes to training, it's really easy for us to understand how well our training is going when we can see your faces and we can see your body language. So I really encourage you to keep your video on if you feel comfortable. And then I'm also going to encourage you to engage in the chat. You can ask questions, you can make comments, or private message either myself or Nick if you run into any issues. Not all the trainers in the training series will be super comfortable with the chat, but I am, so feel free to use it to engage, and I will try and pull things out of the chat that I feel like are relevant to the training. Lastly, I encourage you to step up. Oftentimes, we encourage people to step up, step back, but I want everyone to step up today. Zoom has really allowed people to disengage, and we promise that we really do want to hear from you, and we want to see your engagement, especially in the breakout rooms. All right, so we're going to be starting with something very basic. Again, I encourage you to keep introducing yourself in the chat and ask questions if you need to. But first, we are going to be starting with something basic because these conversations come up, especially with new employees. Less than 10% of Americans are currently in a labor union, meaning fewer and fewer employees will be familiar with labor unions from firsthand or family experiences. And more might have absolutely no familiarity, or they may know more anti-union tropes and stereotypes than truth. We can also consider that many young workers and many immigrant workers come from countries without labor unions or labor unions that are really different. So it's good for us to know kind of the basics of what a labor union is. All right, so I'm going to encourage you all to tell us in the chat, what do you think a labor union is? Is it a bowling team, or in more modern terms, an esports league? Is it a social club or service organization like the Rotary Club? Is it a political party? Or is it D, a group of workers coming together in the workplaces to collectively improve their wages, benefits, and working conditions? All right, I'm seeing a bunch of D's in the chat, so that is correct. A union is a group of workers coming together in the workplace to collectively improve things. And that is really important as we keep going forward. But I also want to highlight what MAPE is. So again, we all kind of know this answer, but new hires or even employees who aren't that active may not know the answer. And it's really important for us not to make any assumptions. So every once in a while, employees won't even know that they're in the MAPE bargaining unit. We'll think that they're in a different bargaining unit or not know who we are, like, period. Especially with COVID. And with a lot of work moving offsite and virtual, it has become pretty common for people not to be super clear about what bargaining unit they're in or what that even is. So what is MAPE? Is it the mean absolute percentage error? Is it B, music, arts, and physical education? Is it C, the Minnesota Association of Pizza Eaters? Or is it D, the Minnesota Association of Professional Employees? What do you all think? Bruce Anderson thinks C. I agree. It would be great to have a Minnesota Association of Pizza Eaters. But the chat is correct. It is D. The Minnesota Association of Professional Employees. This is our union. We are a union of state employees founded in 1980 that are currently represents employees in 426 classifications, from accountants to zoologists, in all 21 state agencies and various boards and several municipalities. So we also have folks in municipalities like Canby, Cass Lake, Clara City, Forest Lake, all that kind of stuff. And you are all totally right in the chat. We do have a lot of pizza at the local meetings and at events, so that C does kind of ring true for some. All right. So I wanted to pass it over to one of our super awesome rockstar leaders. Vernitta is a MAPE leader. She's also a Region 5 director. She's the DPS Meet and Confer chair. She's the building corps member. She's a steward and a PAC member. So Vernitta does it all. Vernitta has been an active member in her union as a member and then a leader. And we really want to hear from you, Vernitta. How has being a member or a leader made you feel powerful? And what does a powerful union mean to you? So I will pass it over to you if you are able to go off mute and share your experiences.
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Well, I think for me just being a member, the leadership part, I don't fall into that, because I feel like every group that I got involved with, I feel like everyone on the team is a leader. If you are a member and you are doing something, you're a leader. As far as a member, I think I just kind of feel like knowing that you have support. I think I got a chance to actually learn more about the contract. So I think it has just educated me more on probably just learning and understanding, because before, I was involved with payroll, and there were so many things fall under the contract, and you just get to kind of know certain verbiage automatically because you're just used to repeating it over and over and over to the people. So I think since being involved, just listening to other members, getting involved has really helped me learn. So I think the powerful comes from just the education. So that's kind of how I feel.
That's really awesome. Have you felt like you have become more willing to speak up and share your own experiences as you become more of a leader? Like, do you feel more confident in your ability to advocate for yourself and your coworkers?
Yes, most definitely. I would say that, because it seems like every time we have a training or every time we meet as a group, you leave, I feel like, powered up. Like, you want to take all that energy and you want to bring it back to your local. So yes, most definitely, when you have such strong leaders behind you, that the staff, when they have your back, I think you really just kind of feel like, okay, you got this, because it's not easy always going up against management. And so when you have someone to fall back on, I think it's wonderful for the team. So yes, I love MAPE staff.
That's really awesome. I really appreciate you sharing that. And that's a really good segue into one of our small group breakout discussions. So we are going to be going into a breakout. There will be about 3 to 4 people per breakout room. And we really want you all to share with the group, when was a time that our union worked the best or accomplished something that was important to you. So I really want you to think about, like, how did it impact you as a person or a coworker you cared about or your work life? And we'll also ask that someone from each breakout share with the overall group one example. If we are pressed for time, we'll do it in the chat, but if not, I'll have people unmute and share. But I will be sending you all into your breakout rooms now, and I will real quick remind folks that we should not be recording during that section. So feel free to turn your mic off, turn your mic on, turn your video on, and engage freely. So super excited to hear about your conversations, and I will see you all in 5 minutes. So we make sure we can keep this tracked for other folks. But I also agree with some of the folks in the chat. I think, David, you have a really good point about talking about organized resources. We use the word organized money primarily because we don't want to shy away from the fact that money is powerful, and money is something that's related to political power specifically. I like what you have, Tabitha, around time is money. So I think those are really good things to add in this like wider discussion about what it means to have organized people, money, and ideas. I also wanted to talk about this other principle of we are stronger together. As many of you probably know, it was only through coming together and walking arm in arm that workers in this country formed a labor movement, won the rights and protections that we all enjoy today. And it is only through sticking together that working people will be able to keep what we have and make our workplaces and society better. So the most common example, which I encourage you to take back to your locals, is that imagine you have an issue with your boss. Maybe it's a safety issue, maybe it's a workload issue, anything like that. And you walked into their office to talk to them about getting something changed. Would they listen or fix the problem instantly? Oftentimes, no. But if you walk in with your boss and 25 coworkers are there with you making the same ask, do you think the odds that that issue will improve? Possibly, I do. Because the more people we have, again, organized people, the more chances we have to kind of leverage power against bosses who generally benefit from workers having less power. Another term that's related to this and also really important is the word solidarity. This means that we lift each other up when we are down. We treat everyone with dignity and respect, and we have each other's backs. This also means, and this is really important for the future of the labor movement, that we fight racism, ableism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and any other forms of oppression. The reason why is they're all connected and they all divide us. It is really important that we don't do the boss's work, as we all lose when this happens, and the boss benefits from a divided group. And so the last thing I will also add around this kind of stronger together piece is moneyed interests, elites, and people that currently wield power. They have always had a story for working people in America. It is usually some version of shut up, do what you're told, the people in power know best, that's why we are in power. And if you just work hard enough and do all of the right things, no matter where you come from, you will be able to achieve. While you may have some valid points, unfortunately, the bosses believe now is not the right time for justice, for distribution of wealth, for better working conditions. And overall, wealthy people create the jobs, so they should be the ones who can establish the rules, but also play the different rules. So we've all had bosses that maybe have challenged us or punished or yelled at us or snapped at us for something that they also do. And that is really important because when we're talking about power and the different levels of power people have, we know that bosses, people that are wealthy, people with political power, often wield that against people. And the union vision, the one that we follow, it begs to differ. We believe in respect in our workplace, and even that we know enough to have a say in how the work gets done. And that these different perspectives that we have, they actually make our workplace and our society stronger. Another really important piece is the 40-hour work week. Basically, having one job and enough to survive and thrive, and that everyone should be able to have affordable healthcare, and that people should be able to retire in dignity after working hard their whole lives. And all of this are things that people have built and fought for. For example, being able to retire with dignity comes from Social Security and pensions. We did not receive that because bosses had some sort of like part in their heart where they felt bad for elderly workers. We didn't receive that because politicians realized that, aging populations weren't able to work anymore. We won that because unions historically have fought to allow people to retire in dignity. And fundamentally, this is the most important part. In this country, the only legal or real way that we can have a voice in decision-making in your workplace is to have a union. It's always better to have a voice that you can depend on in your workplace than it is not. And what we do with that voice is up to us. That is the important part of a democratically led union. There is a lot more common interest in the workplace than our bosses want us to believe. And that is why when we're talking about the union principles that we follow, that we focus on, things like organized people, money and ideas, standing in solidarity, and having a vision and a collective voice are one of the most important things that we can have. So now I'm actually going to be passing it over to Zach, who is going to be talking about the anti-union playbook and some of the things that we should anticipate or prepare for. So Zach, let me know if you run into any tech troubles and I'll pass it to you.
Sure. Yeah, you might need to control the slides here. Oh wait, I can do it now, I think. There we go. Yeah, so first, I guess a little bit about me. I'm a MAPE member. I am the Vice President of Local 1502. I'm the treasurer of the statewide organizing council, and the role within MAPE that I think I hold most sacred is I'm a steward. I've been an employee of the state for about 9 years now. Yeah, and I've been a member since day one. So I get the unfortunate job of telling you all the bad things you're going to hear as a MAPE leader. So I guess here we go. Generally, when you're talking to non-members or just, I mean, even Uncle Bob outside of the union at a family gathering, you're gonna hear a bunch of sort of anti-union rhetoric, and it's always the same. There's really only like three things that are ever said, and it's just variations on those three themes. The first one is related to dues. Why should I pay dues, right? It cost me $21 a paycheck to be in the union. That's $42 a month that I could spend towards, whatever, a bunch of Netflix accounts, I guess. Like, why should I pay that, right? That's for some members, like, to be honest with you, like for some members, $42 a month is a lot, right? Sometimes it's a tough question to answer. But generally, my answer to that question is, I came from so I'm a software engineer. There's comparable jobs in the private sector for me. I know that's not the case for like everybody in state service, but my previous job, I paid $900 a month in premiums for my family. So if you can compare that to what we actually pay for our premiums, $21 in exchange for that kind of savings, like hundreds of dollars of savings, is actually a massive discount for me. But another one that we hear ever since the Janus Supreme Court case, which basically allows people, basically turned every state into a state where we can't have members who are paying their fair share, right? They're basically not full members of the union, but they're still paying for the sort of administration costs that they get for us negotiating for their contract and that sort of stuff. So a lot of times you can hear things like, well, why would I pay dues when I get all of that for free? It's not like everything that we have in our contract was hard fought for by people that go back generations, right? Everything that we fought for is everything that we could lose. So even things like, for example, like I had mentioned earlier, our raises aren't necessarily set in stone right now, right? We have a legislature that could decide to vote down our contract in the coming months. Like, so there's the reason why you would pay for your dues is so that we're all stronger, right? We need more resources, I think, to continue fighting. Yeah, and if you want more information on the Janus case, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time explaining it, but basically it was in Minnesota. Minnesota was a state, for example, where anybody who was represented by a union paid a minimum amount to that union to operate the union. So I think in MAPE, I think it was like $15 a month or something like that. And then when Janice passed, sorry, let me back up. So if you wanted to like vote on the contract, you'd pay an extra $7 a month to MAPE to become a full member. In order to undermine unions, a group of right-wingers basically said, this is forced speech. I'm being forced to act as, I'm being forced to give money as speech, right? According to the United States government. And therefore, because money is speech, I'm being forced to speak on something that I don't want to do, right? So what that meant is that all the fair share people no longer had to be members of the union to get the benefits of unionization. So, you know, we represent several thousands of people. Quite a few people don't actually pay union dues, but they still work under the contract that we negotiate, right? Sometimes that's referred to as like the free rider problem. I actually hate calling those members free rider problems, because anybody who is not a member now could be a member in the future, right? So I don't think it's really useful for us as union members to I guess deride those people. Usually, if they're not members in the union, there's some sort of thing that we need to as organizers to crack. But the next thing, oh shoot, I went way too far. Britton, could you bring me back? Thanks. Yep, here we go. Yeah, we'll just leave them all up. Who cares? The next thing is futility, right? Unions don't do anything. You hear that a lot. Uncle Bob loves to say that, right? Unions don't do anything. They protect lazy workers. You know, well, first of all, lazy workers aren't protected by union members. I don't hire and fire anybody, right? That's management. Management keeping lazy workers around is a management problem, right? Usually they're just too cowardly to, you know, deal with the problem, or properly train workers or whatever. You know, but I think it's important with this one that when you hear someone say unions don't do anything, to actually kind of acknowledge that. Like, it's not necessarily not true, there's a lot of nots there, that unions don't do anything. We are only as strong as the democracy of our union, right? I think Vernitta said something that I wrote down here. It's if you're doing something, you're a leader, right? So if you're not doing something, what does that make you, right? What does that make the union if you're not participating in the democracy of our workplace? It's really easy, I think, for folks to quote unquote third party the union. Think of like, MAPE does this, MAPE does that. No, it's me and you. We're the members, right? So if we have feudal feelings about the union, that's on us, nobody else, right? So I think that's important. We're also living in a time, I think, in America where like people just don't trust institutions, right? And that manifests in all sorts of ways, right? Like we're 20 months into a pandemic now, and things seem to be getting worse, right? Even though we have a vaccine. You know, we're a year out from the insurrection in January 6th. Like those are effects, I think, of like people losing faith in our institutions. But we actually work for those institutions, and I think it's on us to like actually really defend them. So, you know, when you hear things like unions don't do anything, I think the answer is like unions do what union members want, right? So if you want the union to do something, then it behooves you to be very active in the union, right? The people who show up are the people who get to control what the union does. And then finally, I think like strikes. Strikes is the big scary question, right? Like you don't get money during strikes. I think you know, the question, will I have to strike, is another one you have to be honest about. The answer is you should be ready to strike, right? We derive our power from the things we were hired to do. You know, I think the answer was we're a group of work, like earlier we talked about like the the definition of a union is a group of workers coming together, right? But I think the maybe the union's 102 answer is a union is a threat that is credible, right? We are hired for whatever domain knowledge we have in our head about our agency and our bodies to produce something, right? And then our time to do that, right? That's what we trade in order to get back fair wages, good benefits, and ideally some dignity at work. And those are things that management sometimes wants to take away, and definitely politicians want to take away, right? So the way that we have power, the way that we can execute power, where all power from a union flows, is from, it's all from that, right? If we withhold our brains, our bodies, and our time, then we have leverage over the people who want that from us. So I think that's important, no, I don't want to go on a strike, absolutely not. But I definitely want Governor Walz to be afraid of a strike, right? Because otherwise our contract is just, we are, I guess we're beholden to whatever the benevolence of whoever's in the governor's office, right? We need to, be ready to make a threat. Do I think we should go on strike right now? No, we're not, absolutely not prepared for it. But I do think it's something that as members, we need to talk about to each other and be pretty frank about, right? It's worked for MAPE in the past. My mother-in-law was actually a member back in the strike in the early 2000s. And it was effective. So I think the answer to anybody who says, I don't want to go on strike is neither do I, right? I don't want to go on strike, but that's where our power comes from, right? If we need to, as a last resort, use that, then we have to. But power doesn't necessarily come from someone firing the gun. It's from waving the gun around like a maniac, right? Then people listen to the gun-toting maniac. They also listen to, politicians will listen to folks that are in a union that is really threatening a strike. So that's that. I think you're gonna hear that and variations of those themes quite a bit. The answer is to really try not to play too much into it. Acknowledge them, right? Acknowledge what you hear, but then try to flip the narrative a little bit.
Awesome. Everyone, please give thanks to Zach in the chat, because he has been not only incredibly flexible and awesome, I think his perspective is really great in these kind of conversations. So we're going to jump over to leadership identification now. Leadership identification is really, really important. But one of the things that we often get asked is, who is a leader in our union? Who's a leader in the workplace? And this is a really important question for us to define. So first, there are a couple different ways we can think about this. We can think about someone with a title. This is president, director, steward, someone with a title or position or a role that makes decisions. This doesn't actually allow people to be a leader. Someone with a title might not be a leader. Just like a manager is not synonymous with a leader in your workplace. Having a title in our union doesn't guarantee that someone's a leader, but almost all fit the definition for other reasons. We also have people who know a lot about the unions or our contracts. Someone who knows a lot about labor history or a contract. It's always better to know stuff like labor history or contract than it is to not know. But it isn't knowledge that makes you superior. That's really important. This is something that is helpful in the workplace, but just having a lot of knowledge doesn't make you a leader, especially if you're not doing anything with that knowledge or that education. Some people also see someone as a leader if they are cool or funny, or they have a great story, or they're someone who talks a lot and gets listened to. These people are really great because it is good to be liked and respected by your peers, or have a generally positive personality traits, or even a meaningful experience to share with others. However, union leaders aren't always the people who are the most forceful, take up the most space in the room, or talk the most. Although, empty mouths don't get fed, and a part of democratic member organization is going to be exercising your opinion and advocating for your beliefs, this is someone who, while they're important to the union in general, don't always build power through their leadership. And this is actually the most important definition. A leader is someone who has followers. This is really the only definition that we believe means anything here at MAPE, because if unions are about collective power and collective action, then a union leader is someone who has followers, someone who can bring people into the union, somebody who models the idea that a union is about all of us, not just yourself. So when you're thinking about your leadership and becoming a leader, or even people you want to become a leader to work with you and make MAPE stronger, thinking about the people who are trusted, who have followers, who when they say something, people listen, and people often will go to that person when they have questions or issues. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, David. There's similar dynamics to navigate with political parties where rules games can obstruct the broader democratic impulses. And that's why it's really important that we have leaders who have followers and people that they specifically listen to and are listened by. Because we want people participating in our governance, like with the shared governance, that understand like what it's like to be in collective action and in collective step with others. So when we're talking about good union leaders, we are also talking about people who do a lot of things but show up. And again, a leader is someone who has followers, but it's important for us to understand what can separate a good leader from the rest. So I'm going to encourage you all to vote again. We will have A through D, and I encourage you in the chat to let me know what makes a good leader. It is someone who listens to their coworkers, someone who educates and mobilizes, that's a really important word, their coworkers, someone who stands up to the boss and represents the will of the membership, and someone who has skills, knowledge, and ability. So vote in the chat. Which answers do you think are right? Is it all of them? Is it one of them? Is it a few of them? I'll give you a couple seconds to let me know in the chat. Awesome, awesome. Yes. So for those of you that picked out yes, the answer is all of these things. Good union leaders, they listen to their coworkers, whether in a local meeting or an intentional one-on-one conversation. When another member doesn't know something, a good leader will educate that person. Even better, a good leader will empower that person to learn themselves through resources, training, or pointing the person in the right direction. This is especially important if the leadership and education is in an empowering way. Especially when we're talking about people who don't know a lot, it's really important that we invite people to learn with us instead of just kind of lecturing or telling them, acting like they don't know anything. When something needs to be done in an organizing or an issue campaign, someone needs to be at that, or someone needs to be in an investigation. A leader is someone who will either step up or delegate so that we keep working towards a goal or making sure that the members' needs are met. So while smart leaders pick their battles, a good leader is someone who will stand up to the boss whenever is needed and will lead by example in this way. And that is a really important thing when we're talking about union leadership, showing and leading by example. Good union leaders are about everyone and not just themselves, and they put the whole union first. Finally, we're always working on this. Just like everything else we do, good leaders have skills, knowledge, and abilities that separate them from all others. Like, for example, knowing our history, understanding the contract, understanding labor law, and understanding how to have a new member conversation, as well as things like negotiations, and making sure that they are constantly talking to coworkers and doing the work and doing it well. This is really important when we're talking about building power, because power is, as we mentioned, is built collectively. It's built with each other. So it is really important that workers or leaders have skills, knowledge, and ability, but also listens to their coworkers and brings them along with them. So when you're thinking about leadership, I want you to think about how are you going to not be a gatekeeper to the union, but instead be, I guess, an open gate and someone who invites people in to engage and be more leaders and all that kind of fun stuff. So I want to give folks, we have about 4 minutes, and I have some asks for you all as people who showed up today. I really want to invite you into more opportunities for leadership and engagement. But first, I want to give you all an opportunity to ask any questions. So feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. And if you have any questions or need some clarification, I will give a few minutes to answer that. And then any I don't get to in the chat, I will email you. Awesome. So I'm not hearing anything, and I try to avoid just weird Zoom silences. So feel free to put the questions or comments in the chat. Happy to keep engaging. I'll be saving the chat, so I will follow up with people that might not have had their questions answered during the presentation. Actually, Bruce, that is a really good question. And I don't have an answer for that because there are too many ways to answer a question like that. However, I have an overall answer. The overall answer is we have time to build power. We have time to not only make sure that every person at your work site, in your local, is a dues paying member and someone who is fighting with their coworkers, but we also have time to identify what are the issues that we are willing to not give up on, that we are willing to give up on for something better or something else. And more importantly, building up some of the processes so that when the negotiators on MMB's side start doing their, for lack of a better term, BS again, that we are able to mobilize quickly and show Governor Walz and the state of Minnesota how powerful we are. So the answer is we're going to be doing organizing, and we're going to be doing more organizing to build the power so that the people that are signing off on the contract and negotiating on the state side are the people who are so afraid of collective power that they are going to be hopefully not doing the continued bullshit that they did before. Zach, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was actually hoping to answer the next question. The what are the top issues for MAPE in the coming year? If it's okay. Yeah, so obviously everything, everything members want, we want, right? But I think priority wise, number one is making sure that our contract is ratified by the state legislature. That's the probably the biggest short-term goal. It's everyone on this call needs to be aware that it will become a political football. The Republicans are going to try to do insane things with it, like they did last time. For those of you who weren't around the last time, they tried to like change contract language within it, which is, I don't even think they can do legally. Like there's just a bunch of stuff. Ultimately, they just use that as leverage to get other things. But that's going to happen, right? So we need to be prepared for that. So wherever you live, call your legislature and tell them to ratify the contract without issue, because it's a huge pain in the ass. The other thing that they might try to do is they may try to, right now what happens is the process is once the SER, which is a committee of the Senate, once they pass the contract, we get our raises, right? And then it becomes very hard for the legislature to take that away. The legislature can do whatever the hell they want, and they may try to take away that sort of mechanic of the contract. It won't pass, but they may try to do that. So that's another thing to be prepared for. The other thing is we are an election year. It's not a budget year, as far as I understand, but it is an election year. So I can't tell you to vote for certain people. Our PAC can, so pay attention to what the PAC is endorsing. Maybe donate to the PAC, that sort of stuff. But the organizing council and the political council for the state are going to be doing quite a bit of work on those issues as well, particularly making sure that members are organized in certain Senate districts. So that's that. Keep an eye out for that. There's also a bunch of other questions here coming in. What could be become stronger outstate where geography can be a real challenge? I mean, I live outstate. I'm up in Moorhead. My local is, I think if I wanted to hit everybody, it'd be like 300 miles round trip. I don't know. Can we shrink the state? there's a lot of challenges. I think a lot of it just comes down to bearing down and just gritting your teeth and doing it. Geography is an issue, particularly in the winter. We do have a lot more tech infrastructure, and I think our members are way more comfortable with Zoom now. So if you have a local, such as my own, which is why I ran for local leadership, that doesn't really like to do Zoom meetings, start pushing them to become more Zoom heavy. I think that's a small thing you could do. And then what else do we have for questions here?
So we are at time.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we can do our kind of final closing, and then if folks want to stick around, we can answer some questions. So we do have 2 asks for you today. I would really like to see everyone that attended this meeting to schedule 3 one-on-one meetings with people in your local who you think could be leaders, or ask them to step up or get more involved. That could look like, hey, we really need someone to take notes in our meeting. Can you come to the next 3 meetings and do that? Or, hey, we really need a membership secretary. Would you be willing to come and learn about that position and potentially even run for it? If you are newer and might not have 3 people in mind, I encourage you to invite 3 of your coworkers to the next local meeting or event. As we've talked about, power is built collectively and with each other. So we definitely need to make sure that every time we have a training, an event, a local meeting, that we are inviting people, even people that might have told us no in the past, because you never know when you will get the opportunity to develop a new leader. The last thing is take this training to your local. You can connect with your local leadership to host this training during a local meeting or as a standalone virtual event. I know myself, I would love to come train and talk to your local. We have a lot of amazing organizers, leaders, folks from the organizing council and the PAC who would love to come speak at your local and share a little bit more about their work, or give a training similar to this. So I deeply encourage you all to take a look at some of the trainings coming up and sign up for those, as well as take this one back.